So if your website feels stuck in the search results, it might not be because of what you're doing wrong today. It could be because of what you haven't touched in years. So outdated content can quietly drag down your rankings to keep you off of page one on Google, especially if your competitors are constantly keeping their pages relevant and up to date. So in this episode, I'll show you how to spot outdated content, when it's time for a refresh, and some simple ways to bring your pages back to life so they can work harder for your business. So if you're new here, my name's Josiah Roche, and I've helped my clients refresh over 1,200 outdated pages, leading to a combined 8 million more visits to their websites from Google search results. And so keeping content relevant is one of the simplest ways to climb back onto page one. And today we're going to dive into how to make that happen. So let's get into it. So why does outdated content hurt your rankings? So Google prioritizes fresh and relevant content because that's what people are searching for. And if your pages aren't updated to match what people need right now in the exact search intent that they have, then they can start to feel outdated and irrelevant. So competitors who refresh their content more regularly than you will have the advantage and makes it harder for your site to rank at the same time, which sucks. It's a double whammy. And so this connects to something what we call the mere exposure effect. And basically, the more familiar or relevant someone feels to us, the more likely people are to trust it, right? And so when someone lands on a page that feels current and useful and relevant, the more likely they are to trust it. But if your content feels outdated or out of touch, it feels like it's a page back in 2005 and it's super outdated, then it can create doubt and mistrust, and people are likely to click away and, never come back, right? So Google pays attention to these behaviors because if people leave your website or don't stay on for long enough or don't interact with it, then Google takes it as a sign that your content isn't meeting their needs and it's not relevant and it's not trustworthy. And over time, this can cause your rankings to drop, right? And we don't want that. So updating your content isn't just about pleasing the search engines in this way. You need to also show your audience that you're keeping up with their needs, the trends, the search intent, all that kind of stuff. And obviously, when your content stays relevant, you can build trust with them. People keep coming back depending on what your content is, which obviously helps your rankings go up. So now we've got that covered, we need to find outdated content. So tools like Google Analytics or Google Search Console can make this super easy. So you need to look for pages where the traffic has obviously dropped or visitors are leaving very quickly with bounce rate and things like that. And I use a tool called Site Behavior for that as well, because Google Analytics isn't as useful as it used to be in that way. And there are signs, obvious signs that, some pages aren't meeting the needs of people or people aren't even visiting it in general. And that's a sign that they're outdated pages or not really useful pages anymore. So you need to start with older blog posts, guides, or service pages you haven't touched in a while. Ask yourself, are they still useful? Are they still answering people's questions? Are they relevant to the search terms or the keywords I'm going for? So for example, if it's a blog post about social media trends for 2020, probably doesn't hold that much value this year because it's 2024, right? So, it needs to reflect the current year in that way. And so Google Search Console is especially helpful because it shows you which pages has lost visibility over time, right? Or aren't getting as much visits as it used to be, right? And it's got those trend lines and you can look over a certain time period. So check what search terms are bringing people to these exact pages that you want to rank. And then if the content doesn't really match what they're looking for, like it's totally irrelevant with what you're saying on the page, then obviously it's time for a refresh. That's another sign you need to refresh that page. So basically you just need to find these gaps and then, see which pages you need to go through one by one to cull them or refresh them. And once you know what needs improvement, because it might be super obvious once you start to see what's ranking for that page and what the page actually consists of, what content is on that page, it might be super easy for you to think, oh, okay, I can think of 100 ways to make this better already and more relevant and more useful to that search term. So now that you've found the page or pages that are outdated and no longer relevant, you need to decide whether or not you need to remove them or refresh them. This is very important too, because you don't want to just go willy-nilly removing pages because it can really affect your search engine rankings. So most of the time, it's actually better to refresh your existing content because this keeps the SEO value, the pages already built up over years or over time period, and it also keeps all those backlinks and existing rankings that it's already got. So for example, if you're a dentist with a page called Tips for Whitening Your Teeth in 2020, you could update it to something like How to Get Brighter Teeth in 2024 or whatever the current year is. And then you obviously revamp that page with more fresh advice, more updated techniques, all that kind of stuff. Obviously, don't keep the old stuff, right? So deleting pages should actually be a last resort. okay? And it needs to be done very carefully. So if you've got a discontinued service, something you no longer offering, it's a product that you don't have anymore, or it's an event that's long over, then it might make sense to remove those. But even in those cases, you've got to see how you can repurpose it. But if you do decide to remove them, then make sure you redirect the URL to a related page or homepage, right? Make sure you've got a redirect in there, because broken links can really confuse people and hurt your rankings over time. So it's better to have a redirect than have a totally broken link. So if you're unsure, ask yourself, does this page still offer value? Can it be updated to meet today's needs or today's techniques or whatever, right? It's all contextually relevant. So for example, a plumber's guide on fixing pipe leaks or common pipe leaks might just need a few tips or tools to stay helpful, right? It might be an evergreen one that you don't even need to touch, but it's good to revisit these kind of pages over time. But if you've got an old product that you don't have anymore in stock, or it's no longer existed, or it's discontinued and no one searches for it anymore, then it might not be worth keeping, right? You got to use your common sense in that way. So refresh pages that still have potential and remove only pages that are like really you cannot save them. They're totally outdated. So how do you actually refresh content effectively? So let's say that you got a blog post, right? And it's SEO tips for beginners. Okay. So let's say that used to perform really well, but it had a drop in traffic, or it's not performing as it used to be. And it might just need updated advice or new helpful examples or current statistics to date, just to, revamp it and bring it back to life, as we say. So evergreen content like how-to guides or industry best practices or glossary type of pages also benefit from regular updates to stay accurate and adding more examples and things like that. So you basically just need to start with what's missing or outdated on that page. Are the statistics old? Do we need to replace them with new information? Are there broken links? And then you can just fix them or replace them. It's that simple. So if competitors are outranking you on similar topics, then you need to see their content, what they're ranking for right now, what they're including that yours doesn't have. And then maybe it's time for better examples, including recent data, trends, charts, images, YouTube videos, tweets, like anything to make your page more relevant to whatever the search query is, infographics, all that kind of thing. So refreshing, it's not just about adding more details, it's making the content more relevant to the search query. So you need to think about the structure as well, and the presentation of the page and how it presents to bots and also humans, right? So if you can break up long paragraphs with more clear headings that are related to the search term that you're trying to rank for, adding more visuals like charts, images, simplifying the layout. All these things can make your content way more easier to read. So for example, turning a really dense or huge block of text into bullet points instead, or adding a quick summary at the top to make, it very helpful for people that are on the go and in a rush, it makes a huge difference, right? And that's what Google wants to see. So these align with what we call the fluency heuristic, right? Which is the idea that people prefer content that's easy to read and understand. It's fluent in context, right? And so outdated pages that feel really clunky and hard to navigate really just push people away. But updated pages that are clean design, they're modern, they're relevant, they've got great stats, they're nice to read on mobile. It's way more inviting, and it keeps people staying on your page. So just small updates like these, even tweaks to your headlines, just tightening up the introduction, all of these make a huge difference for keeping people on your page for longer, which Google is trying to look for, right? So you need to treat your older content like it's an asset over time, and so you can just keep revisiting it and polishing it so it stays valuable over time, right? So next is doing internal linking, right? So internal links help people and Google find their way around your website, okay? So for Google, these links show how your pages relate to each other in a relevant way and which ones matter most, right? Which ones are important. So that you're basically telling the bots, hey, these pages I'm linking to are also important. Go crawl those. And so for people visiting your website, these are also good for them to keep exploring, going down the rabbit hole of your website to get more information that they're looking for, so you can increase the time on page. So if you're a dentist with a page on teeth whitening, then you can link to related pages like how to keep your teeth white after treatment, or what to expect during your teeth whitening appointment and all that kind of stuff. And this just helps people like go down that rabbit hole and find even more useful information to build the trust with you so that they don't leave your website so quickly. And another example might be a lawyer that has a blog post on what to do after a car accident and link it to a related page on how to file a claim or common mistakes to avoid after an accident. Or let's say a plumber, right? So a plumber might have a page on how to fix a dripping tap, right? A leaking tap or whatever. And then that links to their emergency services page for emergency plumbing in Brisbane or whatever, or a guide to signs that you have a leaking tap or whatever. I don't know. So these links really help people find the answers to their questions, keep them on your page, improve your search engine rankings, and, some of those turn into potential customers as well. So by adding and fixing your internal links, making sure there's no broken ones along the website, you can make it really easy for people to explore your website and for Google to understand the relevancy or contextual relevancy between all your pages and how they connect with each other. So it's just a simple way to improve your website and help visitors and bots at the same time. So next is to re-index your pages that you've just updated. So after you've updated them, you need to let Google know about the changes, right? It's just not going to know, without telling it. So basically you need to start by updating the last modified date on the actual page. And so you can do this on WordPress. Other site builders and platforms allow you to do this as well. Or some of them are just automatic. And so this tells search engines and people that the content is fresh and up to date, mainly just search engines though. You need to go to Google Search Console and request a re-index. And so this helps Google notice that the updates are there and it processes it faster and recrawls your website. You need to keep in mind things like small edits like typo fixes and stuff won't really do anything because Google really values big updates like adding new sections, refreshing old data, or including helpful visuals and things like that. And these kind of changes can actually show that you're improving the content for visitors and not just tweaking little bits and pieces. And this ties into what we call the recency effect, which is a psychological principle that says basically we pay more attention to newer information, right? So when Google sees a freshly updated page, it assumes the content is more relevant to what people are searching for right now. And it's like a new edition of a book, right? It feels more trustworthy, the updated edition, and it's better than the current one that's already been around for a while. So reindexing doesn't really take that much time. It takes a few minutes. I've got a tutorial on YouTube on how to do that as well. And it's a very simple way to update your pages and get them noticed by search engines. So how often should you actually update your content? Well, it really depends on your industry and how fast things move. So if you're in a fast moving industry like tech or fashion or SaaS and all that kind of stuff, you'll probably need to update your pages every couple of months and keep up with the trends, right? It depends. Or if you're in a slower industry like legal services or plumbing or whatever, once or twice a year might be enough for you. Even evergreen content, right? Those timeless pieces on how-to guides and service pages that it's not really relevant or timely, then they can have a review every now and then to make sure everything's still accurate. But yeah, a couple of times a year is fine normally. It depends on how big the changes are needed. So keeping an eye on big industry changes like AI and all this kind of stuff. Google algorithm updates can also help you decide when to refresh your page. Like when they came out with EEAT and things like that, then a lot of people started to put their author bio and stuff on their blog articles so that it showed more authority, right? That it was done by an expert, that was written by an expert and started to increase the rankings. And if you didn't have that, then you would get less rankings, right? So that's pretty much everything today. Outdated content can really hold back your website from ranking a lot of pages. And there's been lots of case studies out there where companies have removed a lot of pages and culled them and then found that their rankings across all their other pages improved dramatically. So there are case studies out there. You can read those, but refreshing is a really easy way to boost your rankings and keep things super relevant still. Instead of just starting from scratch every single time, you can work with what you already have. So updating old content not only improves your SEO, which is amazing, but it also improves your conversion rate as well, if you think about it from that context. So take some time to go through your older pages, figure out what can be improved, and make updates that actually count. And don't update for the sake of updating. Think about it, right? So it doesn't matter if you're fixing broken links or updating with fresh insights or giving the page a new focus. Everything makes a big difference at the end of the day. So that's all we've got time for today. I hope you got value from this episode. If you've got any questions or tips to share, leave them in the comments below. And until next time, catch you then. Cheers.